the duties didn't change, right? The requirements of the job didn't change. The boss maybe didn't change. The work hours didn't change. The office or the cubicle didn't change. Your chair didn't get more comfortable, etc. None of that changed. The only change is your relationship with the people around you.
Good to go.
Good to go.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. So, Kris, how are you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, welcome to Bearing the How podcast episode number 6. Today, I have Kris Ornelas back on. This will be his third time that he's been on. Him and I I'm sure that we'll never run out of things to talk about.
We are addicted.
For sure.
That's right.
And so many of these ideas, I think we're in alignment with each other perfectly.
Totally.
So kind of a new format with this. We actually have like bullet points of things that we just thought it'd be a nice little structure to have things to keep us on track. And obviously we can go wherever we want to go with it, but I thought I would just read this off really quick. So we have nihilism and the vacuum of values / meaning, Taoism and true balance, honesty and genuine discussion, Jesus as the ultimate non-victim, what does it mean to be a Christian according to Jesus, conscience as the Holy Spirit, and then I put in parentheses, I think conscience as God. So that's something to get specific about. Yeah. The Holy Spirit is I went to a Bible study recently and they talked for like 20 minutes about the Holy Spirit. Like, what is it? How? It's such a complex thing to try to understand. Anyway, last thing, the need for collective agreement and unity of thought, the benefits of religion as a place for growth, social connection, and peak experiences and narratives that help reframe your reality. So that last one too, it's just such an important thing, that community aspect of it. It truly is lacking in a broad sense. I
agree.
Like sports, that kind of thing, it all is like, kind of there.
We were talking about that.
There's still a lot of negativity with that too.
Yeah.
And it's I've benefited a lot with getting a little involved in the church that I'm going to right now. It's been awesome. And I'm keeping a super open mind about all of it too. But what were you telling me? So before we started recording, we were talking about Sam Harris. And maybe before we even talk about this, I've listened to him a lot also, and I think we agree with him. What is your perspective on Waking Up?
Yeah. So I was saying that I'm listening to Waking Up, which is his most recent book, and I have always been a fan of the way he writes and thinks about things. He's very rational, very reasonable. Sometimes probably too rational, right? And that might be the downside. But your strength is your weakness, so that's fine. And so I was just sort of listening to it, and my immediate takeaways, and I'm only a few chapters in, and so he might clear some of this up as we go along, but my immediate thoughts have a lot to do with the fact that he seems to interpret Christianity in a way that is as unfavorable as possible. And he seems to interpret Buddhism in the most favorable terms.
Why do you think that is?
I love Sam, and if he's listening, Sam, I really do adore your writings and your thoughts. But I think it has a little bit to do with bias. I really do think it's a bit of an emotional detachment from Christianity. He doesn't want it to be true. He doesn't want anything in it to be useful because he thinks it's been used for oppression and all sorts of things, which I agree with, right? If you read his book, End of Faith, he has large sections devoted to just shredding the Catholic Church. Which is good. I think the parts that he shreds should be shredded, you know. But then he lets that sort of become all of Christianity in his mind, where it's like, oh, these priests who did that, or these Protestant speakers who did that, are Christianity. But he doesn't do that with Buddhism. He doesn't talk about, for example, Pure Land Buddhism. A lot of people don't know about this sect of Buddhism. It's actually probably the most common form of Buddhism on the planet today. I think it's most common in Japan now, even above Zen Buddhism. More people practice this than Zen Buddhism. Pure Land Buddhism says that there basically is a heaven. It sounds very much like the Christian approach.
Yeah, I need to look into it.
There is a heaven. You pray to Amida, which is the Amida Buddha, right? Sort of like the deified version of Buddha. you pray to this thing, you say mantras. Some of the most well-known Pure Land speakers and teachers will actually pray to this deity tens of thousands of times a day. I mean, they'll say this mantra over and over. And the thought is that the more you say it, the more you pray to this deified Buddha, the better chance you have of being reborn into Pure Land after you die. It sounds very much like
very similar.
Right? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And so we don't think of Buddhism in that way because I think in the West, we kind of glorify the more esoteric Buddhism, the original writings of the Buddha, non-attachment, things we've talked about, non-attachment, impermanence, the idea that you don't really have a self. It's always morphing and evolving. There is no constant. There's no permanent.
Definitely.
And those are I agree. Those are the best parts of Buddhism.
And meditation too. I think
totally.
a lot of people immediately associate Buddhism, meditation.
100%. Yeah. But what's interesting is that Pure Land Buddhism, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, something like 500 million people, I think, roughly on the planet, practice Buddhism. And my guess from what I've read is that at least half, if not more than half of them, practice Pure Land Buddhism. So if you go to most temples in just LA or anywhere, you're probably experiencing some version of Pure Land Buddhism.
Wow.
But what's funny is that when Sam or anyone else is talking about Buddhism, they don't ever talk about that form of Buddhism.
Yeah.
They only talk about the more favorable forms.
Yeah.
And my frustration is that I wish we would talk about the more favorable forms of Christianity.
Yeah.
I wish we'd talk about the esoteric. I wish we'd talk about the original orthodox, what did Jesus say?
We talked about last time. For sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's all that same stuff. And so anyway, that's my initial kind of frustration with the book already. And I've had that frustration listening to Sam in the past, where it's like, he will paint Christianity with such a broad brush, and then very specifically interpret Buddhism in the most positive or favorable ways.
Yeah, it's very true.
And it's a little.
I haven't, just to make sure I'm being clear, I haven't read Waking Up. I've listened to a lot of his podcasts, and I think I listened to the Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris debates like 3 times, all of them at this point. And
those are great.
That's where a lot of my, I guess, preconceived ideas about Sam Harris has come from, is from those. I need to look into him more. I don't want to talk too much about his ideas because I don't know them really in depth, but I feel like I definitely agree with a lot with what you're saying. And people in general, that's how a lot of people in general
that's what I was do
kind of paint this picture of Christianity.
That's what I was going to say.
And I'm just curious why. And I also, maybe while we're on this topic, if you don't mind, like, what is if you had to say what the most beneficial things pertaining to Christianity are, maybe what they have done in the past, or even like in your life right now, what are some of the things that you think go past all of these closed-minded ideas, like the things that just kind of help you practically in your life?
Like at the core of it.
At the core of it. You know?
I was just thinking about this week. And partly because I knew you were going to ask that question.
Well, we've been talking about it all week.
And I just sort of loosely had been thinking about it and trying to refine this a little bit more. There are a number of things I think that Jesus taught. And again, it's just like you can study Buddhism from the perspective of people who reinterpreted Buddha in their own way and then created a religion out of it. Or you can study it from the perspective of what the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, actually said, right?
Yeah.
The same thing is true with Christianity. You can study Christianity and begin to understand it from a perspective of other people and how they interpret it and how they extrapolate and create theologies and doctrines and dogmas, etc.
Yeah.
Or you can go right to the source. We talked about this last time, like the red letter Christians. You just go right to the words of Jesus. I'm a big fan of that. I think it's a better way of going about it. So if you follow just the red letters, you find things like this. Love is at the top of that hierarchy, right? So just learning how to love. And that again goes back to, I'm sorry. I just said sorry to myself.
No, it's fine. If you want to take them off, you can.
Actually, no, I actually like it.
Them? Cool.
It's got a nice, it's got a nice feel.
It takes a second to get used to, but it's
like we're in a little place. I love it. Just chatting. So at the top of the hierarchy of the Jesus hierarchy, if you might say, is love, right? We talked about that. Love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. That's implied in there. So love, and that's sacrificial love, and that goes back to sacrifice, being the ultimate sacrifice. And that doesn't mean being a martyr. That doesn't mean absorbing everyone's sins all the time and being codependent and being afraid of tension and you don't want to call anyone out.
Yeah.
That's not Jesus, because number 2, I think in the hierarchy is truth.
Yes.
Jesus is the Word of God. Word also means truth. Logos means truth.
Yeah.
So Jesus was all about love, but also all about truth. And I think truth is profound, not just in that you say things that are true, but also in that you are true to yourself. You're authentic.
Which is more important, I think.
Huge. It has. I agree with you. I think it has to start there.
Yeah.
If it doesn't start here, then anything that happens after that is disingenuous and ineffectual.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I have no interest in, and you can tell. I mean, when we talk to people, we know, we have a good sense for this. Most people do. We have good intuition of who's lying to us, who's telling us the truth, who's just trying to manipulate us. We know that.
Yeah.
And it affects our relationship with that person. And so number 1, love, I would say, is at the top of that hierarchy. And truth is, and these are all intertwined, by the way. It's like, in order to really love, you also have to be truthful, etc. So truth is, I think, the next one down. Jesus represents that truth, because he's the logos, the Word of God, or the truth. Number 3 would be something like faith or belief, the power of belief itself. And even if you don't believe in any of the supernatural elements, if you don't believe in any metaphysics and any of that, we at least have strong scientific evidence that the placebo effect is real. So bare minimum, you've got that.
Yeah.
Bare minimum, you've got the idea that if you believe something hard enough, the chances it will happen significantly increase.
Yeah.
Bare minimum.
That's bare minimum, but it's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal.
That's right. And it could be way more than that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying bare minimum, even if you're the hardest skeptic, you have to at least believe that about belief.
For sure.
And this is why Jesus, and we said this last time too, this is why Jesus said to a lot of people, you've been saved by your faith. Faith is not this passive sitting on the couch waiting for things to happen, hoping they'll just turn out.
Yeah.
Faith is the actual positive behavior, right? You actually go out and you do something. You be like Jesus.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are some of the things. There are more. Humility, recognizing that we have the same power within us that Christ had. I think it was Paul that said that the same power that is within Christ, or was it Peter, is also within us. So it's the same power that raised him from the dead, so to speak, is also within us.
Yep.
Jesus said, "You will do even greater things than I have done." People forget that's like what a cool thing.
There's something I do want to ask you. What is there's a book that isn't in the Bible, and I don't know the exact details of it, but it's a book that was left out that they found that talks about it's stuff that Jesus said, and it talks about things like that you can almost interpret as like new agey. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
That would be the Gospel of Thomas, I believe.
I think that's right. Yeah. And I think that's so interesting.
It's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, this is just to sort of extend the history we were talking about last time briefly. The Catholic Church in the 4th century, we talked about it. I said under Emperor Aurelian, but I meant Constantine.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so under Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, Rome became Christian. They basically converted to Christianity. And in that process, he demanded from the cardinals and the council that they come up with a scripture, that they put everything together. And part of the compiling process at the Council of Nicaea, which was finalized in, I think, 325 AD, part of that compiling process is also an exclusion process. So it's not that they just put stuff together. They also decided which books they thought didn't belong.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I don't know enough about their motivations to know if they only included things that would benefit them politically or not. I don't know. I mean, that could go either way.
Yeah.
But we do know for sure that the Gospel of Thomas is a real thing that may have been written by Thomas. I mean, it may or may not have been. I don't know. It might be a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
But he said things in there, like, for example, he said something like, "The kingdom of earth is laid out upon the earth and men do not see it." That's one of the most famous quotes from that gospel.
Gotcha.
So there were something like over 20 books, full books, that were not included in the final canon that the Catholic Church didn't want to have in their canon.
Gotcha.
And then Protestants later, I think, actually even excluded more, I think. Anyway, and those books are known as the Apocrypha or the alternative texts. So anyway, and so those give us more insights too.
Yeah.
But I would say this, let's just backtrack. Even without those, we have a bunch of verses still. All right,
Sorry, guys, we're back. Technical issue. I think we figured out it may have been the Wi-Fi that causes the cracks. Let's see.
We'll see.
All right, go ahead.
All the metaphysics of Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
right? Shh, come on, Wi-Fi. So these are just some quotes, and of course I understand these are out of context, but if were we to go into context, we'd be here for 6 hours. But I just sort of give you a picture of some of the things Jesus said that I think people tend to forget, He said that we've talked about this, the kingdom of God is within you, it's at hand, and it's among you. In 3 different places he says that, or at least 2. Seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be added to you. So if you put those 2 verses together, that's profound.
Yeah.
That the kingdom is within you, and if you seek first that within you, then all these other things, right? Shelter and comfort and joy, all the other stuff that you're seeking, food, will come to you. And without being self-helpy, that's kind of the law of attraction.
Yeah. And
at some level.
Just so I'm also clear, and I think we've talked about it, the more that I think about this, I would probably still consider myself like agnostic, but I am really, really diving into Christianity, and also to the best of my abilities, like taking it deadly serious day to day. Like I'm really, everything we're talking about, reading, going to church, I'm taking it as serious as if I believe it literally. You know what I mean? Like I'm really trying to act that out, but I still have, I just have a very, very open mind, and I still try to think of things in a much more broad sense, but I just don't want anyone to like label me Christian, and traditional. Or
right.
whatever.
And I know we've spent a lot of time on Christianity, and I hope that we actually get to other
want
things.
to too.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
But I hope we also, and I'm sure we will, get to other things like Taoism. And we've already talked about Buddhism a little bit. My point in coming on here especially is not just to say that you all have to go to church on Sunday and that you're all sinners.
It's good just being clear about that. We're both interested in the ideas behind it.
I think it's an endlessly fascinating conversation and topic regarding religion in general. Christianity happens to be the one that I'm most involved in, and that I would kind of call my own. And it's the one that is the most common in our society. I think it's an important conversation. So totally, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Just clearing that up.
No worries. So the kingdom is within you. You seek that first, and all these things will be added to you. And a lot of that also says, stop worrying about so many other things. And you can kind of start here. Love is the greatest commandment, which we've talked about. You're saved by your faith. And I think I just said that, is that belief itself has power. Belief itself is powerful. It's transformative. Belief itself is guiding, right? And so when you believe things, and then even more so when you say them, Jesus says that when you speak things, they have power, that the power of life and death is in the tongue. That when you say things, it's like a feedback loop. You say it, you hear it, and then you believe it, right? And so even that, which then affects what you say again, and then all of that affects what you do.
For sure. It's like just the mentality. It's
really,
like just keep in very simple terms.
It's like it doesn't have to get too crazy or deep. It really is that simple. And psychology has proven this over and over again. I mean, this is not just some crazy woo-woo like new agey. This is really, science has proven this too.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're having these conversations, because I do still feel like the depth that we go into with this stuff, it isn't commonly talked about, even with Christians, people in church. Like it isn't. They don't go into the depth of trying to understand it from a more psychological perspective. It seems like, at least just from the little bit of experience I've had.
I agree with you. I would also say people seem to be interested, though. I think they don't know 100%. Where to start. And so I just to give people a little bit more credit, I do think that whenever I bring this stuff up, at church or just kind of in passing at church, it's people will say, that's interesting. I've never thought about that. And they'll ask questions about it, and they're kind of curious. And not everybody, but some people. And that's good.
Yeah, I think
there's hope there that we can begin to explore more complex ideas within even this frame of thought, even within this religion, that I think are profoundly transformative and will change the way people both live and think about their own religion.
Yeah. I think, let me ask you this, or maybe we've talked about this, but I definitely think that is what has to happen at this point with our society.
I agree.
In order to save Christianity or save whatever religion. To me, it's more about transcending it. I think we may have even talked about that a few podcast episodes ago, but I think this is what needs to happen at this point. We can't no longer, in a kind of naive way, turning the blind eye, kind of just all in,
right?
Just do it. People, especially like me, I'm a good
Right.
example of someone that was atheist and agnostic my whole life. And it took,
I was as well.
it took, oh, I didn't know that. Oh yeah, you did mention that.
I think I
didn't you?
mentioned
That's
briefly,
awesome.
yeah, but it was a lot of my life.
Wait, were your parents Christian or?
Spiritual, but not religious. I mean, we had a lot
Gotcha.
of that, which is good.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it
good, for
functions
sure.
well. I think that can function well.
Yeah,
but
definitely. I just think anyway, it took Jordan Peterson like breaking through the brick wall of rationalism for me to make me think about, at this point, it's not about I love Christianity and Jesus Christ is my savior and I'm gonna just be a Christian and God, and it's
Right.
not about that. It's about why does it work?
Yeah.
Why does it work right now,
Right.
even in this society with me in my day-to-day life? What are the deep, significant ideas that make it work, that transcend rationality?
Yeah.
To me, it seems like that.
Yeah.
Like that's the question that I'm having in my mind. Like, why?
Function.
Yeah, it's like,
why does it function so well?
Yeah, it's
What is
just
it?
like, man, all religions like have some nugget of these deep
That's right.
truths. But anyway, I don't mean
No,
to
and
interrupt
if I
you.
could
I'm sorry.
kind of go on with that, is, I've been in church for, probably about 12 years now, or about 11 years. And man, I really have had experiences that blow my mind, both with me, but even just watching other people.
Yeah.
And knowing, for example, someone that's been through deep, dark depression and anxiety and same kind of thing, they've been totally lifted out of that.
Yeah.
90%, you can't say that stuff ever goes away 100%, but total transformations. I've watched close friends of mine who were heroin addicts and meth addicts and just in the deepest, darkest places, and they didn't want to be there, I've watched them be transformed through this narrative of religion, through this experience. It's a multifaceted thing. It isn't just the story. It isn't just the prayer. It isn't just the people. It isn't just the music. It's all of it.
Yeah,
and when you get this comprehensive experience of religion, I think that's transformative. And that's what a lot of people, quite frankly, I think are missing out on.
Yeah.
And again, not saying you need to go to church on Sunday. If you want to, go for it. But maybe there's something else. Maybe you're missing I'll say it like this. Maybe you've thrown out the baby with the bathwater, because you had good reasons to abandon religion in the first place,
That's the issue.
And
right?
there are
some good reasons.
There are good reasons, and there are problems with religion. But you didn't have good reasons to abandon all of it.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to think about, And I want to say this also backwards. I think the converse is also true for people on the other side of it who are trying to preserve religion. If you want to keep the baby, you got to throw out the bathwater.
Yeah.
You got to take the baby out of the bath eventually.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And at some point, you have to recognize if you want to preserve the goodness of religion, if you want to preserve the effect, the positive benefits of religion, you've got to be willing to throw out the things that aren't working.
Yeah.
Because not everything in religion works. Not everything in Christianity works. And you've got to be willing to admit that. So I do think it kind of comes from both sides and meets in the middle.
Yeah.
For
definitely.
sure.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
too, like, it's just such a, I mean, we can go back on topic here, but I'm curious to ask you, like, you seem like you're pretty in the same mindset as me with kind of thinking about Christianity in a much more broad sense, or even religion.
Yeah.
My question, something that I have been thinking about and wanting to start actually looking into is the common thread through all religions, right? And then what is like even from a biological standpoint, what is that deep need that we have for this ultimate form of validation is what it seems like to me. Seems like believing in, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. This is a personal experience that I had recently, which was, it's going to be hard to describe it because it wasn't accepting Jesus Christ. And it wasn't like this magical experience where I accepted Jesus, but I was at work having a very hard day. And I went into the maze, which is the victim mentality, something that I want to talk about more at some point. I was in the victim mentality, kind of feeling trapped, having a hard time with employees, and I was really not feeling great. And I started thinking about, okay, this is one of those moments where you can learn and you can grow. Think about like religion, think about some of the stuff Kris and I have talked about with this stuff. And I kind of, in my mind, logically, if this makes sense, I logically accepted Jesus Christ and God as my Lord and Savior. Like from a logical way, I was like, well, you know what? Just think about this right now in this moment where you're feeling like a victim and you're having one of these personalities where you're not taking responsibility. Think about Jesus, think about God. And it was almost like a wave of relief came over me of, I don't need validation from anyone anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need validation from my bosses. I don't need validation from my family, my friends, from any of the employees. I don't need any of that. There's something much more grand that provides us with validation. That's something that went through my mind in that moment of, even if you like, and I still, obviously, I'm not like, I believe in Jesus and I believe in God, but there is this much deeper, grander form of kind of, I mean, I don't know how to explain it. It's such a weird experience that I had.
I think that's a good point about validation.
I think a lot of
that's really
Christianity for some people has to do with they need validation.
Yeah.
They need validation, and no matter what they do in their personal lives with other human beings that can never be perfect and provide you with perfect validation, that they always feel like they're lacking validation as a human being, which is where nihilism comes into play too a lot, right? Where people have that feeling, but then they they go into the nihilistic mindset and think, this is a selfish and narcissistic mindset. I'm just this little bitty tiny dot in the universe and none of this matters. And it never ends well, in my opinion.
Yeah. Or they seek validation in the wrong places.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is, I think you're totally onto something. I mean, this is a big part of the benefits of Christianity, for example, or any religion that teaches something similar, is we talk about it in church all the time. And it's sort of like coming to me as we're talking. Just not too long ago, I heard a sermon on identity and knowing who you are. There's a great song we do at church called I Am Who You Say I Am. And who the sun sets free is free indeed. I am who you say I am. And there's this sort of grounding in that narrative. You ground yourself in that truth that, like, it's not about what they say. It's not about who they say I am. It's about who you say I am, you know? And whatever you means and whatever all that means, we can parse that at some point later. But I think ultimately it almost doesn't matter what it is. It's just that it's something greater than and better than and more awesome than and more grand than yourself. And even more grand than the people who are speaking about you negatively. And so when you put that at the top of your identity meter, who am I and where's my value, your value meter, when that becomes your new metric, that can really change you for the better.
Yeah, for sure.
That can really get rid of all that guilt and shame and all that stuff that holds people back. Fear, social anxiety. It's
like what people often talk about when they have psychedelic experiences, when they take psychedelic drugs. It's the ego dissolution, right?
That's right.
What people often reference.
That's right.
It's like, that's just interesting that we're just going to this. But the first little bullet point is nihilism and the vacuum of values and meaning, which is tying into this. But that's something that I think about that is almost the question that I have with it is I go to the place of, okay, but what is that in a deep way? What is
nihilism
that?
Or what's that dark place?
What is the need for us to have this ultimate form of validation? What is that? It's weird too, because I actually went on the nihilism subreddit and kind of subreddit, and I was kind of talking to some people and got into a long debate with someone on there who was very nihilist and thought that I was a ridiculous, selfish, narcissistic person trying to. I started talking about suicide and stuff, and they went down that path. And I'm going to talk about that in a separate video at some point. It was really interesting, but it's like you just said something that like struck a nerve with me, which was there is something that's more grand than us and bigger. And nihilistic people, what would they say that is? Right? They say, well, that's the universe, and you mean nothing. But the thing that's more grand than you is nothingness. But then the religious people go on the exact opposite side, right? And say, you are something, and the grandness is what provides you with the divinity that you have in you, which is what, I mean, I think consciousness is a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's something that we all have. It's the biggest mystery. Anyway, I don't mean to ramble on.
No, I think that's great. I think it has a lot to do with the narrative you choose.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, and I'd love to talk about this, and I've been thinking about this more. At the end of the day, every belief system is faith. Everything has
true.
faith. There's not
nihilism.
Really,
you have to have faith to believe that inherent meaning doesn't exist.
That's right. You can't prove it.
Yeah.
You know, there's no scientific test you can do to prove that there's no meaning in the world.
Exactly.
Everything is a faith-based religion. And I mean that literally.
Yeah.
Everything that's even atheistic and even secular humanism, and Yuval talks about this, right? That they're all basically religions.
Yeah.
In the sense
Stories, right.
that they're stories, they're beliefs that are based on hierarchies of values and ideals that are not themselves scientifically founded. Even the idea, let's just take this as a great example, humanism. Secular humanism basically says a couple things. Number one, it says that all humans are equal in value, right? And that's how we get a more egalitarian political system, right? Where your life is no more valuable than mine and mine not more than his. And it doesn't matter our function in society. It doesn't matter how much money we have or our IQ or our status or whatever.
Yeah.
That your value is independent from those things. I love that idea. And that's a very Jesus idea, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's not a scientific one.
We talked about that a little bit on one of those podcasts.
There's no science that supports that idea. We are all different
the science
biologically.
Definitely contradicts that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yet that is one that most atheists, and I use that term, I'm not
But I guess
trying
it's
to
how you
paint with a
define
broad-
value too. How do you define the word value?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would just, I think they would say just the value of life itself, that
Yeah.
it's worth living, that life itself is worth living, which itself is another faith-based idea.
Yeah.
Really? Is
Yeah.
it better to live than not to live?
It's very true.
Who decided that?
Yeah.
Where did that idea come from? Did science tell us that? No, most of these ideas, even atheistic ideas, are faith-based ideas.
Yeah.
So everything has faith. And even the hardest, most objective scientists, will tell you, we're not totally sure about that theory.
How would you define faith?
Let's see. I won't use the Paul definition, but I think you could even simplify it. I think whatever closes the gap between certainty and mystery is faith.
Gotcha.
So wherever you aren't sure on something, I'm talking 100% sure. I'm not saying 90%, right? Wherever you're not sure on something, yet you believe it anyway, that's faith.
Gotcha. So it's not even strictly religion.
I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
Or you could phrase it as everything is basically religion, but just different manifestations and iterations of it.
Which, I mean, like, I defined the word religion on the last podcast, actually. I did. How would you define the word? And I just used Google. But because that's another question, that everything is religion. And it's like, well, how do you define religion?
Yeah.
Because an atheist person would say, no, that's ridiculous.
Right, I'm not religious.
Religious is dogma, and there's all this whatever that's associated with it. But it depends on how you define religion.
Right. It totally does. And I definitely don't think I'm an ultimate authority on, like, here's what it should mean.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I think. I think religion can be defined. Well, there's a couple things. First off, as far as I understand, maybe we can check this. I'm pretty sure the word religion comes from, oh boy, I'm really digging deep now. I think it comes from a word that means to link back to or to reconnect with. I think religio or religio, something like that. It's a Latin root. And I think it means something like to link back to or to reconnect with.
Latin, religio, yeah.
Yeah, and what is
Got it.
Is that the definition?
It was originally used to mean only reverence for God or the gods, careful pondering of divine things.
I read in a book once that it said that it meant in certain cultures to link back to or to reconnect.
Possibly. That was just on Google.
Yeah, so we'd have to do some digging, but I'm pretty sure that's in there somewhere. And so the word itself kind of sort of implies that it is a kind of a reconnecting or rekindling to it, the ultimate thing, the ultimate creative impetus of all life, And in Eastern philosophy, they would say that it's sort of it's a reuniting with reality and realizing that separateness is kind of an illusion.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of new agey. That's kind of more of an esoteric definition. I think a basic definition could just be I love Yuval's. The idea that religion is itself just any system of beliefs that is based on hierarchies of value and based on ideas and philosophies and maybe even narratives or stories, myths, whatever. Any of that and any system of beliefs that is based on those things, that's not purely objective or scientific.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
The second part to that is there are practices and routines, etc., that those people do that are consistent.
Yeah.
Both within the group and among different groups, whatever.
Definitely.
So it's something like that. I mean, it doesn't. So, for example, like secular humanism is totally a religion in that they all share these set of beliefs and hierarchies of values that aren't necessarily scientific, but they all believe in them anyway. And so I don't know. I'm also open to my definition of religion changing over time. I don't even need to use that word. I mean, we can use any word,
Yeah, it's true.
It's just a way to describe phenomenon. That's all it is, right?
Yeah. The definition that I liked that was just on Google Dictionary, a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance, which is very similar to what you're saying. Just a simple way.
I love that.
Which it's, that doesn't even specify dogma or anything like that.
That's a great definition. Yeah, supreme importance. Yeah. I love that. I think that's totally spot on.
Yeah.
And secular atheistic humanism would totally fall in line with that, right? Egalitarian values. Everyone has value. All human life is valuable. You should treat other people how you want to be treated. All these ideals that are really nice, they treat that with supreme importance, but they're not really. They're still just beliefs. I mean, it's not like we've done research to prove that those are the best beliefs.
Because Sam Harris would say his overarching notion seems to be well-being. He mentions like the ultimate well-being,
right, like in the moral
and then
landscape.
Jordan would say that's heaven, but Sam Harris would keep it separate and say you can measure well-being.
Yeah.
And then they get into that argument, and Jordan Peterson, no, you can't. You can't measure well-being. It's subjective.
It is.
Per person.
I think I side with Jordan. I mean, you can measure some elements of well-being. So you can measure, for example, pain and discomfort.
Well, that's the argument against nihilism, right? Is if you don't believe there's any meaning, pain, you cannot avoid pain. It's meaning. It's almost the fundamental meaning because everyone feels pain.
Yeah.
There is no going against that,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I need to get a nihilist on.
No, that's right. And I mean, I would say that I used to be totally nihilistic. That it was it's all just random chance and nothing matters. And I would say, okay, so this is kind of where I was going with this, and I want to kind of wrap it around. Is everything is faith at some level. I shouldn't use the word everything. Many beliefs that I know of are at some point faith-based. Yeah. And so the question, as far as I can tell, is which one functions best for the individual? That's really the best question.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying this, and I want to be clear. I'm not saying that I think all beliefs are equally as true or valid or rational or scientific. I mean, there are certainly, and I've said this before, but there's certainly a spectrum of trueness there, right? There's certainly a spectrum of how real or supported certain ideas are.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah, because otherwise it starts to, you verge on that postmodern, everything is just a free-for-all. It's whatever you believe your thing, I'll believe my thing, and there's no difference, and it's all great. And that's not totally true, because the problem with that is that when an individual can't figure out what to believe, what do you tell them?
Yeah.
How do you help them? When they've tried 2 or 3 different things and they're not working, do you just say, just keep trying new things? Yeah. Or do you actually say, well, this has actually worked for a lot of people. Maybe try that, right? So that would be a more practical way, I think, to go about that.
Gotcha.
So my point would be that I'm not that afraid of, I'm not that afraid of faith. I don't believe in faith in dogma, doctrine, certain books, certain people, certain theologies, right? That's faith in, I think, the wrong things. But belief in yourself, belief in God, belief in love and truth as the highest values, belief in those sorts of things, that's great. You know, and faith in those sorts of things, even though you don't have scientific evidence to support them or whatever, or hard scientific evidence, fine, great, awesome. And to me, to answer your question earlier, that's a lot of what I derive from Christianity. You know, this belief that, like I was saying, love, speaking in truth, faith, all that stuff. And so what I wanted to say, I kind of lost train of my thought there. Humanism, secular humanism, faith, atheism, Christianity. Oh, yeah, narrative. And so I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what narrative do you want to live by? Every day when you wake up, what narrative are you going to choose? Are you going to choose nihilism? Are you going to choose the one that says, because, oh yeah, this is my point, is that everything baseline, everything is going to require some faith. Yeah, like that's what we were saying, and that's what that was kind of the punchline that I was looking for. Everything's going to require faith, so why choose nihilism? Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, that's the question. Like that's something, because I actually do understand the argument that nihilists make. I actually turned the Wi-Fi back off because I do think it was, as soon as I turned it on a second ago, it started cracking.
Yeah, I think
so. It's kind of a good thing. But I want to look it up. But next time I'll have it prepared, pre-recording. But nihilism, what someone would say, what this person said in this subreddit, there is an argument to make is that there is no meaning to anything because we are just organisms living in an infinite universe, and there isn't anything divine about us that is separate than like this book over here being divine. Everything is just this, it's just matter put together. And I completely disagree with that. I disagree with it because of consciousness. I really do believe consciousness is this fundamental reality that is why you can argue that human beings, specifically animals, but any life, but human beings specifically, are highly valuable because we have the ability to ask questions about the questions. We have the ability to ask questions about being aware. We have the ability to ask questions that allow us to improve our lives and other people's lives in an abstract way. I think that's valuable. If you're just looking at things in terms of life, life.
I agree. And even created meaning is still meaning. Yeah. I mean, it's not like what I had a conversation with friends and we were talking about nihilism a lot. And for those that don't know, you might look it up, but nihilism, just in like a bullet point, is basically the world philosophy or the view that there is no innate meaning in the universe, that everything is random, there is no God, there's no divinity. It's not only atheistic, it goes a step further than atheism. It's not just saying there's no God, it's saying there's no meaning, there's no value. Everything is created, everything's an illusion, everything's whatever, right? Yeah. And it can end up being very pessimistic. It often tends to be. It can end up being very hedonistic. Just live in the moment because there's no reason to sacrifice anything for later because, things
That's the question I asked this guy was, what if you're nihilistic and you fully are really letting that be your belief system, why do you do anything? Why do you? And then they say, and it's a good argument, it's like, well, because I feel joy. You don't have to have meaning. You don't have to believe in something grand. You don't have to believe in God or Jesus or anything to feel joy. That's enough to push me forward. But that is such a, like, it's like you must not have experienced highly complex emotional experiences in your life that it's very hard to clearly choose the best thing to do. Yeah. Because when you're in one of those situations, like, how do you make a decision when there are serious things there is no right and wrong, really. It's very gray, the ethical and moral decisions that you can make. And if you're just thinking, oh, I feel joy, so that's like why I keep going, well, that seems like very selfish to me. You know what I mean?
It's as far as I can tell, it's pretty short-sighted.
Yeah, it's short-sighted.
What happens when that joy goes away? Yeah. What happens when the feeling goes away, right? If you base it all on feelings and just immediate sensation, I don't know. I don't know if I trust that as a long-term formula to happiness and fulfillment.
I don't, because you'll just kill yourself when you end up not feeling joy for like 6 months.
That's the other thing. Or you don't allow yourself to believe in a narrative that would benefit you. Yeah. And that I think is harmful. Yeah. I think that's ego. I think that is the ultimate downfall. That's the ultimate downside to human pride. Is that the moment you think, oh no, I've got this all figured out. That's really arrogant to me.
Yeah.
You really have got this. You really know for sure. You've got this all figured out. You know for sure there's no meaning and there's nothing beyond this. Just because you can't see it, or just because you haven't been able to measure it
so
immediately.
with you there. Like, don't you have this?
That's so
feeling?
arrogant.
I have this feeling. I'm going to use that word. This belief. This feeling. It's almost like Sam Harris, atheist people, nihilistic people that believe that materialism, that there is no inherent meaning. It's like they're living. It's like they're just looking at life as this little bubble, and I think that there's something outside of the bubble that contains the bubble, and then I think there's also something outside of that bubble that contains that bubble, and you can keep going on.
Sure,
there's something so there. It's like it's just obvious that there is something much bigger, even if you just think of things in terms of biology, even if you think of things, even if you go a little bit new agey and say consciousness is God. Sure. It's still, even with the idea, I'm so curious to get to know just your initial thoughts on this, but I almost put at the top of my questions or beliefs or things that I'm interested in right now, the very kind of at the top of that list is existence. Just existence in and of itself, existence, because consciousness exists, right? Because people say consciousness is God, consciousness, the simulation theory, like we are consciousness, everything is conscience or is consciousness, and God is consciousness, and God, he manifests bodies with a little piece of consciousness in it, and I mean that's awesome, and I think who knows? I would agree that I think consciousness is a fundamental reality anyway, but then consciousness exists within something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't there something that has to contain anything that you can think of as existing? I guess some people say consciousness and existing are the same. Existence are the same thing.
I don't have the bandwidth for that. I mean, I love that question. I just really don't know the answer.
Yeah, of course.
And I think to some of these things, but I do love the question. I think it's useful. I just think for some of these things, it's almost like, I almost take like the St. Augustine approach on God. I think we talked about last time, where like saying less about God might be more. Yeah. The more I say about God, the more I try and categorize and define and label and identify, etc., characterize. The more I do that, I feel like the less I understand God.
Yeah.
And the more I do that, the more I trap God into my own brain. Yeah. Right. And that's the opposite of what I should be trying to do. I should be trying to get my head into the heavens. Yeah. Not trying to get the heavens into my head. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's a quote.
I find myself
that's a G.K. Chesterton quote. You should read Orthodoxy if you
for sure.
Yeah. Great book.
I struggle.
I was trying to do that.
I struggle with that. Like I'm more like my mind just never stops when I try to like.
I feel you.
It keeps jumping and keeps jumping and keeps jumping, and I love it. Like I'm at this point because of the way that I've decided to approach Christianity, reading the Bible, like analyzing in a different way. I feel good about allowing my mind to wander, because before, when you're nihilist or when you're very atheistic, when you're in a not good mindset, that will just crush you. But I feel like I have this structure right now, and I really love letting my mind just wander, and I just can't help it. Like it's such a great, like it's just I don't know. Maybe there are just some people fun. There are just some people that honestly, don't question reality and don't question existence.
That's part of it, dude. It's just fun. Yeah. This is it. Like, it's just, fun. You could be a nihilist, and I get how there's like foundation there, and I get how there's like there's some science behind that, and it's kind of rational, but it's kind of lame, dude. Yeah. It's just kind of lame. Like at the end of the day, right? Like it's like, what a boring lot. What a vapid way of viewing every interaction every day. Yeah. I'm not saying there has to be.
You were a nihilist, you said yourself.
Totally.
What was your like feeling? Your day-to-day kind of...
I mean, you're kind of hedonistic. I'm not saying that everyone who's a nihilist is hedonistic. I'm saying that was my propensity with it. That's where I went with it. I got fat. I was 60 pounds heavier, and I was eating a lot and just doing anything I wanted, and porn, whatever. I mean, it was because everything's on the table.
Yeah.
That's the problem. When you abandon all moral structures and you just say, you think you've got it all figured out, everything's on the table, but not everything is healthy.
Yeah.
And not everything won't kill you, you know? And
then the point to bring up,
then what?
Tell me, like, to me, I believe this because I'm the same way. I was the same way. Like I went down that mindset and made poor choices that weren't good for me in the long run. And that was the justification. I mean, for me, it was not as, like, I wasn't as aware of it. It was happening more on like a subconscious level, like kind of just going down that lifestyle. But my question is, like, though, like what you were just saying, you were heavier and you were, you know, you had everything on the table, like, you weren't happy, right?
You know, that's a hard question. I don't think so. I mean, if you would have asked me then, I would have said yes, because I was in the middle of it, right? Just like when you're in the middle of, I mean, I don't know, not to be crude, but when you're in the middle of having sex with someone you'll never see again.
Yeah.
If you ask me in that moment if I'm happy, oh, dude, I'm real happy.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But not really.
Yeah.
And
like
you
in
realize,
a deeper way.
You realize
right?
after that's over, it's just like we've talked about. You watch porn and if someone asks you in the moment, you know, are you feeling good? You're like, feeling great, you know?
Well,
but after,
I think that
maybe
depends.
not. It depends on how honest you are with yourself.
It depends on how honest you
know?
and if you're having these kinds of discussions, I think.
But then after the fact, you know, you feel like kind of
like shit,
empty,
right?
just empty, you know. And there's an emptiness there. And I love it's an Einstein quote, and I know a lot of people say things are Einstein quotes. I'm pretty sure this is actually one, but he said something like, you know, there's two ways to view reality. One is though nothing is a miracle, or two is though everything is a miracle.
Right. Yeah.
That's up to you.
Yep.
You know, and it both require faith, and that's the point I was trying to make earlier.
Yeah.
Is it all requires a level of faith. You know, because you can't know, you really can't know any of this for sure. I mean, at some level, it's like, oh, I think that's true. Yeah. You know, you have to make that moment in time happen. And so, if you can choose anything, it's like, choose love, choose truth, choose faith, choose goodness, choose beauty, choose meaning, go for it, dude. Choose a narrative that makes your life better.
I mean, I think I'm just wanting to make sure that I preface like things that I'm saying with this is my opinion, and there are things that I'm assuming. I'm just going to say that I'm not a psychologist, right? I haven't seen a bunch of people and studied in depth nihilism and psychology and a lot of this stuff. I'm just like a normal working class guy who likes to talk about this stuff. So I'm assuming, and I'm talking about personal experiences I've had. But what did you just say before I said that? There's something I was about to say.
It's okay. My mind is doing that too. What did I say?
I was going to say...
I was talking about the Einstein quote and how everything is faith, and you have to, if you're going to choose meaning, you know, choose a narrative that helps you. I mean, you may as well choose.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I know in my life, I have felt substantially better when I've gone down that mindset of choosing kind of that everything's a miracle. That's a cool way to put it.
Totally.
But also, not only has it made me feel better, it's gotten me through times where I've been absolutely depressed completely, where like I can't, like, there are times, and I still have my days where I just feel unmotivated and there's just a lot of shit that piles up, and I still get out of bed and go to work and do the best I can do and, you know, do the best that I can. And I don't go down that horrible, negative, nihilistic mindset. And I think that's just, to me, it seems like a lot of people I've interacted with who are nihilism, who go into nihilism and have that mindset, don't at all, to me, seem happy. Immediately I agree. On Reddit.
That's my immediate...
They immediately went to insulting me and belittling me and trying to get a rise out of me. And that's
superiority,
exactly. That's the immediate place. And I don't think that you can really be a content person when you're trying to, when you're consciously trying to hurt other people. How can you be content and happy with yourself when you're trying to belittle other people?
Totally,
it doesn't.
right.
To 100%. Me, that's not my belief. I don't believe that.
I totally agree with you. And, you know, just to really dive into nihilism, Nietzsche had a lot.
We need to do a podcast just on like Beyond Good and Evil.
Yeah. Nietzsche, Beyond Good and Evil, The Twilight of Idols, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I mean, Homo Echo, or Echo Homo.
I've only read Beyond Good and Evil.
Yeah,
and I need to read it 20 more times so I can really.
I mean, so many good. He probably talked about nihilism more than any philosopher I know of.
Look how he ended up.
And here's the thing, though. He spoke against it. You know, I mean, and I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think he figured it out. You know, because he was a pretty
He was
a pretty like miserable person
by the end.
But you know, that also tends to happen with really, really bright people who think too much with one side of the hemisphere, not the other one.
Yeah.
Or one hemisphere and not the other one. Anyway, I mean, so he says, you know, that the whole quote, and everyone has always heard this, but God is dead. You know, that whole God is dead quote. I think that was from Twilight of the Idols. I think that anyway. No, was it no? I think it was The Gay Science. Anyway, it was.
I'll look that up and put it in the comments.
It was one of his books,
in the show notes.
But it was one of Nietzsche's writings, and so he talks about it. But he doesn't say it as like a congratulatory statement. He's not like, "Yeah, we did it, we killed God," and that's how people think of it. Yeah. They're like, "Oh yeah, I hate Nietzsche because he said God is dead," and it's like I don't think you get what Nietzsche was trying to like say. Yeah. He was saying, "Okay, God is dead." We've killed God. We've abandoned this moral hierarchy that is derived from a religious perspective. Now what?
Yeah.
Now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And he even said, he's like, there's a good chance that things are going to fall apart. Yeah. There's a good chance that we're going to have chaos. There's a good chance that people are going to become pessimistic and depressed and anxious and angry. He said this will lead to a will to nothingness. A will to nothingness. Yeah. You know, and that is nihilism. You know, he wasn't saying that it's necessarily good or bad. You know, there is a way to do that right, whatever, you know, that is to say to live the atheistic life. Mm-hmm. But I think he was saying on the whole, for most people, this is not going to be good.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out as philosophers, first and foremost, what this means and what we should do about it.
Yeah.
How do you, if you're going to get rid of something, you have to replace it. And this is what we've been talking a lot about. Think about a great example of this is food, nutrition. I was a nutrition specialist for several years, and I helped, you know, just a few dozen clients. You know, I just did it for kind of a side thing. And
let me interrupt you real quick and just say that I do want to, maybe not on this podcast, but I do want to talk to you about health. And I didn't know that you used to weigh a lot more.
Yeah,
that's
right
really
here.
I mean, it's a good, anyway, we'll get into that, but just want to make sure I point that out so I don't forget. Like, I definitely want to talk about that.
That'd be great.
In more depth, for sure.
I think we've both kind of studied that a little bit.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Okay, so in nutrition, right, when you're dealing with specifically weight loss, there are a lot of goals in nutrition, but the most common one, especially in America, is weight loss. When you're dealing with weight loss, when you're dealing with really severe cases, I mean, we're talking people who have like 150 pounds to lose, right? And they really want it, and they come to you and they pay all this money for your advice and your meal plans and your support. It's great. You can't just take away foods. You can't just say, stop eating that, stop eating that, stop eating that, stop eating that, and only eat these three things. No. You can't just limit it to blank. The chances of success, and there were some studies on this, and I forget the numbers, but the chances of success for what we call eliminative diets, or diets that just eliminate for foods, were something like, you know, less than 5%. You know,
so isn't this similar for like trying to quit an addiction? It's
absolutely
like all in the same.
Absolutely, it's the same, and that was my next example. It's just like an addiction, right? When you have, I don't like the addiction analogy because I don't think that religion is necessarily an addiction, but it's the same kind of thing. Gotcha. Where if you get rid of a bunch of stuff, you have to replace it with something. Yeah. So, for example, as a nutrition specialist, I would try and say, okay, instead of eating this, try this, and it's kind of similar in texture and taste. It kind of fulfills the same taste buds, you know, or the same like cravings, you know. And I used to make these brownies I thought they were good, but some people didn't like, but whatever. And so basically they're brownies made with dates and black beans and all kinds of whole food stuff, right? No flour.
Sounds good.
No, it's like, it's got egg in it, you know, and you sweeten it with stevia, stuff like that. And so I would make these brownies and, you know, much healthier than the normal brownie, right? So anyway, so I had a client who loved brownies, and so I shared this recipe with her, and she at first was like, "Oh, these taste like beans," And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I mean, at first, yes, everything is going to taste a little strange, but if you put some like honey on top or whatever, there are different ways to make it taste really good. Or you add some berries was a great thing to do." She eventually loved it. She eventually was like, "I am addicted to these brownies." I was like, "Okay, that's not the goal. We don't want you to become addicted to the brownie." But the point is that in order to replace the unhealthy version of the brownie, you've got to give a healthier version of something like it.
Yeah.
In order to replace meth, sometimes they give you a drug that's not, and I forget the name of it, but sometimes they give you a drug that's not as bad as meth.
Yeah.
Same with heroin. They give you a drug that's not as bad to kind of get you off of it slowly.
Yeah. They do that.
And then once people totally get over that addiction, totally in quotes, they often take up new things that replace that desire or that fulfill that same kind of energy that needs to be like appeased.
Yeah.
I had a friend. I worked in a restaurant, and she was very open about her addiction. It was both alcohol and some hard stuff too. Gotcha. And anyway, and I think it was cocaine was one of the things. It was rough. And she said that once she got into rock climbing and surfing and all these other fun hobbies, and for her it was also sex. Which is actually very common. You find that a lot of addicts will go to something like sex because it gives you a similar sort of
the chemical,
dopamine release.
Dopamine,
exactly.
right,
Right. So anyway, that replaces the prior behavior. And that is almost, as far as I can tell, in my personal experience, again, not a psychologist, I haven't done like a ton of research on it. Hunter's done a lot on this, and I think he would say the same thing, is that you do have to replace at some level. You have to talk about it. You got to figure out why you want it in the first place. But you also have to replace the behavior with something else.
Yeah.
So say all that to say that if that's true in nutrition, if it's true with drug addiction, if it's true in all these areas of life, then it's probably also true in things like meaning and things like religion. Yeah. When you get rid of God, exactly. When you get rid of God, what are you going to do? What are you going to replace it with?
Yeah.
Right?
And look at what we are replacing it with.
And look at what happened in the 20th century. Yeah. Exactly what Nietzsche said would happen. Yeah. We have very atheistic regimes, right? Like North Korea and Soviet Russia, and they were atheistic in certain ways and religious in other ways, but largely non-Christian, you can say. They banned Christianity. That's still true in most parts of China, right? You can't even be a practicing Christian in most parts of China. It's still communistic in that sense. They didn't learn from their mistakes, and that's fine. And so you ban all these religions, you take away people's meaning, you take away all this stuff, you delete God from the picture, and what are you left with? You're left with this just gross, power-hungry, oppressive, nihilistic vacuum of values. And people don't even, talk about being disoriented. Yeah. That is, what a disconcerting era, what a weird century the 20th century was, Now, that's not to say that religion can't also lead to oppression, because it certainly does, in wars and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's to say that both extremes are probably bad.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Say. Both extremes are bad. I think it's all really, I agree with everything you're saying, and it obviously makes sense. That's what happened with me, right? Was I didn't have that belief system, and as a direct result, I didn't have, the way to put it, I guess, was that I wasn't in touch with my values. I guess that's the way that I like to put it, was that I wasn't deeply, my values weren't like integrated in a way that I could consciously reflect on them to help me in my life.
Refer back
and I think a lot of people, that's the case because of like my age, our age, this generation. It's the case because it's very, very common for people to not talk about God, not talk about Christianity, to shun Christianity and like, a lot of the politics, whatever. It's very common
and
to have
that. And a lot of the postmodernism, which
all
says,
that stuff.
Oh, just believe your heart, trust your feelings.
Follow your bliss. Like
I don't know
law of attraction even goes into that realm of like law of attraction, even very much so actually is like you can manifest your own reality and you can do whatever you want. It's the way that it's framed makes it seem like there aren't rules and a structure really that you need to follow. But I think in essence, the law of attraction probably is trying to get at this, what we were talking about earlier. But as a direct result of me not being in touch with my values, I strayed off the path. You know, I mean, generally speaking, I strayed off the path, and things that weren't great happened. And then it took Jordan Peterson waking me up, and then me exploring it and getting back on the path. And now that I'm back on the path, it's like I want to explore as deeply as I possibly can the whys of all this. And I was about to ask you, what was I about to ask you? I was going to say, like, why do you think, maybe from a more biological standpoint, we need the values? What do you think it is that's causing, you know, I mean, I have like all kinds of things I've been thinking about with that: biology, consciousness, our brain. I talked about this on the last podcast. I want to talk about it with you though. Sorry that I keep just jumping.
No, I'm good. Yeah, I don't have any.
Like road rage is a good example that I was thinking about of how human beings are very, like, you okay?
Sorry, I just inhaled that water.
Oh, you're good. My kind of thought, like something that I'm thinking about right now, and I want to start writing, and I think I want to put together a video of it. Something that I've been thinking about a lot is even going into the rationalism. Sam Harris would argue, at least from what I've noticed, like my perception of Sam Harris's argument would be that he thinks rationalism is enough, right? He thinks that just being able to rationalize and use reason is enough to allow us to live better lives aiming at the ultimate well-being. That's kind of what it seems like he says, that rationalism is enough. We're intelligent enough. We have enough reason. That's all we need to be able to treat people kind and aim for love and treat people like you would treat yourself, all that stuff. I'm pretty sure he said that directly in one of those debates, that it is enough. So my argument is that it isn't. I don't think it is. And I have personal experience with rationalism isn't enough.
Where it falls short.
It not only that, but I was using my ability to rationalize behaving in a bad way. And that's what reason is.
And that's
it can be reason, and rationalism will take you down a bad path. That's what like Crime and Punishment is all about. That's what Notes from Underground is about. It's like you're using your ability to rationalize. That's what people do when they commit murders, right? They use reason to justify why it is actually the best thing to do to kill another human being. I mean, that's rationalism. They justify it so properly in their own minds that this person is evil, I'll be doing good for whatever. And obviously this is like generally speaking with stuff, whatever personal cases that you're using your rationalism. Like there are people that can make an insanely intelligent case as to why murdering that person was the best thing that can be done for the overall well-being of human beings. Why you can do anything.
Yeah, you can make that case. Right? Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's where I think rationalism and reason falls short, is that it's subjective, just like anything else. You can use it to do bad. Yeah. And you can rationalize it inside your own mind to do not good things. Right. There is no like fundamental...
The horrors of the 20th century.
Yeah, I mean...
Think about Nazism. I mean, it was known to be a very rational view. They all thought they were being very rational.
I mean, it's like...
They didn't think they were functioning from a place of hate and anger and racism. They didn't think they were functioning from that. Some of them, anyway. Most of them probably thought, as far as we know, that they were doing the best thing. They were doing a good thing for humanity.
What would Sam Harris say in this case? I think
I want to do this. First off, I think we should define, what do we mean by rationalism? Yeah. Are we just talking about using logical faculties as the only part of your brain that you're using, as opposed to creative faculties, and we're ignoring intuition? Because I would say this. I actually think, and Hunter and I have talked about this a lot too. I think the person acting in those ways first have to establish goals. Just anyone in general. Rationality doesn't mean anything in a vacuum. Rationality only functions where you have certain goals. So, for example, if your goal is to believe something that's true or scientifically proven, then rationality will take a path to that end. So rationality functions as a means to that end. Gotcha. Now, if your goal over here, for example, is to overcome an addiction, then your rationality should be functioning to overcome that addiction.
Sorry about that. For some reason, my
I must have said something that triggered it.
Google just came on and started playing some vulgar rap song. That was insane. It was very strange.
That was really funny. Okay. Anyway,
talking about
I don't know what I was
rationalism.
saying. Okay. Yeah. So I would actually, if we can back up even and say, let's use rationalism on the most broad terms. I think it's all based on your goals, right? So again, if my goal in life is to be a loving person, right? And my goal in life is to speak the truth and to become a better version of myself, etc., right? And to also be happy and feel fulfilled. Then I will rationalize things I should anyway, rationalize things towards that end. If someone's goal in life is to make other people miserable and to take down the political system, and to stick it to the man and whatever it is, right? Then their rationality will probably point towards that goal.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good way to define that, because I'm pretty sure I heard Sam Harris say, like, that makes what you're saying makes perfect sense to me. The
right.
common
and so then I think that's the point.
Is
we have
matters.
to step back and say which goal is best.
Yeah.
And that is where
how do you decide that?
That's where pure scientific rationalism does fall short.
Yeah.
Sam would say in his moral landscape, he would say, no, you can make these decisions based on just the spectrum of well-being. On one side of the spectrum, you have great well-being and fulfillment and happiness and joy and as little pain and discomfort as possible necessarily, and then on the other side, you have the opposite of that. And so obviously getting closer to this, the good life, and further from not that.
That's
but
just,
so
to me,
vague.
that breaks down because...
It's just so vague.
And here's an example. To me, it's vague, yeah, and it also breaks down because human beings are still... This is a complete theory that I want to look into and think about, but to me, it seems like human beings primarily are still functioning from our more primitive brain, right? We're still primarily, because that's been around for millions and millions of years. Jordan Peterson talks about this, the limbic system, right? We primarily function from that extremely ancient part of our brain, which is a tribal mindset. If you can think about like road rage, I use as an example of a lot of people, when they get cut off, the immediate reaction is to lump that person in, like, you go into the tribal mentality and you lump that person into a category of that person is an asshole. Why the fuck did you just cut me off? Like, you get so angry. Some people do, like, and it's actually a pretty common thing. And there's a lot of issues with traffic. And when you're in your car, you feel so protected and you immediately do that. But I'm talking day to day, every day at your job with your coworkers. It's very easy to immediately have that more primitive tribal mindset of, if someone comes into work and they're acting like a asshole, they are treating other people with not that much respect, and they are kind of not doing a great job, most people immediately shun that person and lump them in the category of that person is an asshole. I don't want to work that. Like, how many people say that about their job? I fucking hate my job. I work with a bunch of assholes. Like, everyone's, it's shitty. Like, so much of that happens in the workspace, and it's because we're functioning from the tribal part of our brain still, like that very ancient part of our brain that's more based on instincts. Right? Like, you're a predator. The moment you do something or say something to me that goes against me wanting to feel good or whatever, you're a predator. I'm against you.
You're not the enemy.
You're a predator.
Right.
And that is so ingrained in us.
Yeah.
That rationalism, that my whole point is that because that is so deeply ingrained in us, we can very easily always use our rationalism to rationalize that type of kind of tribal mindset. It's happened to me. Like, I went through that a lot when I was going through this journey of like rationalizing and blaming other people and not at all being able to sacrifice my ego, all that stuff that we talk about. And I think a lot of people go through that. I mean, how many times do you hear that a day? How many times do you hear about people talking shit about someone else, like being rude, talking very rudely about someone else, saying like people, like someone that's being an asshole and treating you with little respect, they have issues just as complex as you. And they're acting that way, obviously, because there's some pain that they're going through. And it's very easy to
and you gotta
not
see it.
have that mindset about it. Like it's very easy to say, fuck you. Like you're like consciously treating me like shit right now. Fuck you. I'm not going to like have compassion for you. You don't deserve my compassion, which is where Jesus Christ, right? If
I
you
was
want
just gonna say,
Jesus smuggle, like,
no, I was just going to smuggle all the way.
Right. Like,
well, and I have two thoughts here. Number one, I see rationality as like a knife or any weapon. Rationality can be used for really good things.
I mean, God, people murdered pregnant women in that book. What is that book? Ordinary Men or whatever that Jordan Peterson's talked about. They take pregnant women and shoot them in the back of the head like normal guys. I mean,
and they'll justify
and
it.
It's all rationalized and justified in their own minds.
Now that doesn't mean that's so hard.
It's hard.
You could say from a big picture perspective, that doesn't mean they're being rational. So if you were to sit them down and say, what kind of world do you want to live in? Right? Like, what kind of world do you want to create? Like, what kind of world do you want your kids to live in? Right? And your wife or whatever. They probably wouldn't say a murderous, angry, hateful, terrible world.
Yeah.
So,
which is why it's so dangerous.
So big picture, if their goal is to create a world that
we have a little moth
that,
friend, by the way. That's why we keep waving. We'll just keep them as a pet.
Big picture, they're not being rational, but they think they are. So a lot of that is self-delusion. So I don't necessarily think that rationalism is bad. I think it can be great or it could be bad.
Like and it's also like an ability. It's a tool.
That's right. It's a tool. And that's why I use that analogy with a knife. Yeah. Because a knife can be used for so many good things. And 99% of the time, it is. It's used for food and cooking and cutting and slicing things up and art and all kinds of other things. Yeah. Right? Tons of utility. But a knife can also be used to kill someone.
Yep.
And so I think rationality is kind of the same way. You know, it can be used for tons of good or it can be used for bad. More commonly in our modern world, it's probably used for more good than bad. Because every day...
I think that.
Yeah, I mean, because every day when you make decisions, you are using your rational brain. You're not just doing, how do I feel today? Yeah. You know, if that's the opposite of rationality, I think I would go with rationality. If just go with how you feel. I don't like that system at all. Yeah. You know, because then there's nothing going on.
And that's not a good way to live because we often feel very negatively and we have very quick emotional responses.
Yeah. Right. So then my second thing to kind of Jesus smuggle just a little bit is Jesus on the cross is a perfect example. We've talked about this, right? Jesus on the cross is a perfect example of the ultimate victim who didn't see himself as a victim.
Yeah.
And so
that's
that perspective
exactly
is
what I
huge.
believe about it.
He says what? He doesn't, when he's on the cross bleeding and a spear in his lung and all kinds of stuff, he's not like, screw you guys, you're a bunch of a-holes, wait till my daddy, smites you with lightning. And, he's not like that angry kid who's like, my dad, Yep. He doesn't do that at all. He says, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
Like, what
it's profound if you think about it. Like, if you try to think about it from a metaphorical, psychological standpoint, it's to profound.
Have compassion. That to me is part of and we used this term before, and I apologize for the new agey feel to it, but the Christ consciousness, or the way of looking at the world through Christ's eyes is compassion and love and kindness, etc. Right, but also truth. That doesn't mean that you never start confrontation. And that was another thing I think we said that last time too, also speaking truth.
Yeah, that's what when I talk about compassion, by the way, I'm not saying like in a very new agey, hippy dippy way, love everybody and just let people walk all over you and be a pushover. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just talking about like understanding that everyone has issues and anxieties and troubles and problems. And it seems like to me, I don't know that you can even really argue against this, but when like a lot of the time when people are acting rude or being hateful, like even in a casual way, in a passive aggressive way, it's because they're feeling some kind of pain. It's because they're going through something themselves.
Hurt people.
Yeah, it's such a cliche, but it's true. And I actually live by that every single day. And it's profoundly changed my life and the dynamic at my job with the crew that I'm leading. It's changed the dynamic insanely, having that mindset of compassion.
I think about that with my students.
Yeah.
When they act out, a lot of them want attention because they don't get it at home. Yeah. You realize these deficiencies come from somewhere.
Yeah.
They don't just arise out of the random abyss of chaos. I mean, they come out of, it's all causal.
Yeah.
So when you realize everything is causal, you realize that everything had a first cause, and you go back to that cause or one of the causes around it, and you figure out, how can we address that issue? And then how can I today, even if I have no power over that issue, how can I today help this person to do this less in the future?
Yeah.
That's the idea. It's sort of like humans are large ships. And we're not little motorboats, right? We don't just go all around.
Yeah.
We're large ships. And so when we turn slowly, and not everyone, not all the time, but in general, right? When you turn slowly. And so when you change behavior over time, that's what it takes, is time.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time. I can't fix a student in a day.
Yeah.
Like, okay, they're in my class, and yesterday they had all Fs and they had no motivation, and now next week they have all A's and they're feeling great. People don't work like that. And I think because people don't work like that, we get discouraged and we think, well, what's the point? Why even try? Why even give them the time of day? Well, here's why, because maybe you could be one of many forces that helps that boat to turn just a little bit, and what was on a path to destruction, and a path to hell, right, is now turning around and becoming what might be a path to heaven, and a path to redemption. And if you could play a small role in that, you are the Jesus in your situation.
Yeah.
You are playing that role, and you are being like Christ, And again, Jesus said, I will, you will do greater things than I've done. Like, we've got that power, I think the message of the gospel is incredibly empowering.
Yeah, I think so.
A lot of religion, unfortunately, a lot of Protestant Christianity especially, well, that's not even true. Even some Catholic versions of Christianity are very self-deprecating. Oh, I'm not worthy. We use phrases like what Paul said about how we are like dirty rags or whatever, in comparison to God. Well, true, in comparison to ultimate perfection and goodness and everything, I guess. Yeah. But Jesus said, be perfect as I'm perfect. Why did he say that? If it wasn't in any way attainable, and the word perfect, I think in that language translates best as complete. Be complete as I am complete. Yeah. If we can do that, let's do it. It's an empowering message, that through faith and love and truth and all the stuff I was mentioning, we can be the Jesus for all the people around us, and hopefully they'll be the Jesus to us.
Yeah.
That's the goal, is that we all reach that kind of Christ-centered mind. We all kind of get that same unity consciousness in regards to how we view the world, and we view it through Christ's eyes, just for example, and I think it's powerful. I think there's a lot.
So too.
I think there's a lot there. And if we can just start there, that's a good Christianity.
Yeah,
if we can just start there.
I agree with you. I think I'm so glad we're having this talk. I think this is the first step toward any of these changes, is people just having discussions about it.
I agree.
It's very hard to walk into a church and say, oh, let's think about this more psychologically and change the whole tone of the conversation.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard, but having these kind of conversations for sure. I'm so glad.
Yeah. And I think on that list we had like authenticity or genuine conversation.
Yeah, let me look.
Well, and so I just want to say,
honesty and genuine discussion.
Yeah, great. And so I implore anyone, not just in the church, but anyone anywhere, really have these conversations, I mean, even if you don't have answers, we don't necessarily have these grand answers, but we just have ideas. Two people having ideas together can create some kind of an answer.
For sure.
Or not. Or maybe the answer is we don't know yet, but that's better than I've never thought about it.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
If
you're going to church, if you're just to say it, don't be afraid to talk about it. Right? I think there are probably a lot of people afraid to. It's because then they feel like they're questioning God and questioning Jesus.
But I want to say this: you're not questioning God, and you're not questioning Jesus necessarily. You're questioning man.
Yeah.
You're questioning other people, right? So when you say things about, hey, what does that verse really mean? Well, it was men who wrote it down and interpreted it in the first place. Yeah. So don't feel bad. You're just questioning what other men think, And it can be so productive and so useful to not just the growth of the church, but to your own growth.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to point number 2 about the gospel, truth. Jesus was all about calling out truth, and he was all about saying, I don't think that's true. I think that's true. I don't think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Why don't we take that upon ourselves? That doesn't mean that we determine what truth is, but it means that we do everything in our power to seek it with everything we've got.
Yeah.
And seek and you shall find.
Yeah.
Knock and the door shall be open. But it has to begin with that initiation. It has to begin with that conversation.
Yeah, I think
it's
100%.
huge.
I know at my job, it's just I'm gonna reference my job all the time. It's where I'm learning these lessons in real time every day about this stuff, putting it into practice, like truly putting all of this stuff we're talking about in practice, where it's a playing field with 5 other people that I can really think about this stuff. 100% what has helped me be a much better leader is the moment something arises, some anomaly that's negative, something that's causing a little issue, or some person that has some little attitude or whatever it is, the moment that it arises, I talk about it. And I think that's part of speaking the truth. It's more about pointing out reality as it happens. Because what happens when you don't point something out? It builds and it builds, and you create a story about it, 100%. And it completely deludes the reality. And anyway, I'm just saying, I think that's totally 100% in your day-to-day life. I think that's a big change that you can make right now, is just begin to point things out when you see it. Doesn't mean being an asshole, doesn't mean being aggressive.
And it doesn't mean saying it the way that you first want to say it.
Yeah, for sure.
Your initial instinct is probably not best.
Yeah, that's where you got to use your rationality.
So use some tact, use some filters, and say it in a way that functions best for that individual. Exactly. And that's why getting to know people is so important. Yeah. Because if I don't know you, if I don't have a relationship with you, I don't know how to say it to you. Yeah. I don't know what it is that you need, and you don't know what I need. And so I think that causes a lot of conflict. I think a lot of arguments start there because they don't have a relationship with each other. And so they just kind of throw out words, and it's like, well, you said this. And it's like, well, I didn't mean that. Well, but you said this. And there's all this misinterpretation, miscommunication. So it begins with relationship and love.
You and I had our little experience where we had a little, like, call, whatever you want to call it, a little thing. And we were emailing each other. And then I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to call him. And immediately just resolved.
Instantly, the tone of voice, we heard each other's voice, and we're like, oh, this is okay. He's not an enemy. Yeah, again, that instinct goes away when you have that interface with
texting. The amount of times that I'm sure there's miscommunications when you're just texting someone back and forth. You see something on social media and you don't know what the reality is behind it, and it's
and this is why I think the top of the hierarchy is love. Yeah, because truth not in love doesn't work. Exactly, truth without love doesn't function. It doesn't. You can say all the true things to me in the world. You could say all these things after one after another. I think this belief is bad and that belief is right. But if I don't trust you and love you and have this relationship with you and think that you've got good intentions, all of it will go over my head or deep into my anger. Yeah,
it's crazy how true that is.
And so it has to be started and begin. And that's why Jesus said, I really believe that, started with that first. That it's upon this law of love that all things rest or rely or depend.
Definitely.
And it's through love that all those laws are fulfilled. And so 2 is truth after love. And then 3 is faith. I mean, again, I kind of made up this list, the order. I'm not saying it's perfect.
I mean, I think I would agree with you.
Just in terms of hierarchy, I've thought about those being in order. You've got to first have love and then start to believe things that are true. Seek truth and authenticity, absolutely. Not just with yourself, but with others, like you're saying. Say it when it happens. Talk about it before it gets bad. And then faith. Faith that, built on those 2 now, faith that what you're striving for, what you're seeking for, who you are is worth it, you know, and you go all the way.
We should put together a little cheat sheet, a little document that has, you know what I would put? Here's something that I've been thinking about. I think awareness is one of the most important things in life that you have to have is awareness. And just my opinion would be, I definitely agree with you that love, it's crazy because awareness almost has to be above love, it seems like, because you have to be aware, and well, maybe not, maybe they're just kind of intertwined, but I always think of awareness as, how can you speak the truth if you're not first aware? And Jordan Peterson talks about it all the time too, how a lot of these ancient religions, the fundamental values or whatever, where the ability to see and the ability to speak, which is awareness and then truth. And I always think, it's just something I've been thinking about all week, how important awareness is. What does that even mean? Awareness. The ability to see the truth, or just the ability to see.
Yeah. Huh. Or just even to reflect.
Yeah, because anyway, I would just say love, awareness, truth, then whatever after that. Because how can you tell the truth if you're not aware? I think that's an issue a lot of people have, is they aren't even aware of their own mind. Like they're not aware of the maze that they're going into with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
They're not able to step outside of it and reflect on the depth of a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. I mean, I experience at work with people that it takes a lot to try to help someone to jump outside of the maze and like look down on it, because they didn't have that initial ability to be aware of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what I went through.
Totally. And even just emotional states. Man.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what that feels like to, maybe not to the same extent as others have experienced it, but depression, I mean, I know what that feels like. I know what anxiety feels like. I know that when you're in it, it's really hard to get out.
Yeah.
I mean, it really feels like you're in that, you're stuck. You're stuck in four walls, this room that has, there's no escape.
Yeah.
And that can be a trap. It can be a real trap. And so if you're not aware of both where you are and how you got there and then how to get out, it's dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why information and knowledge and conversations like this are so important, because every time you do this, anyone does this, it gives you another point of perspective.
Yeah.
And another point of perspective. And the more points you have, the more of the picture you can see.
Exactly.
And the more of the picture you can see, the more awareness is built into you, so that when you get into those moments, you've got something to go back to.
Yeah.
You've got the counsel of many elders, they say.
Exactly.
There's much wisdom.
That's one of the really good things about dogma with religion, right? Is the structure to provide you with constant reminders.
Absolutely. And this is a perfect segue. I think you just said it great, going into the Taoism thing.
Yeah.
I was just, there was something else you said earlier that kind of triggered that too. And I thought, oh, wow, that sounds like Taoism to me. I think you're exactly right. And if we can kind of go, I think we're kind of hitting 2 points here. The benefits of religion, I think, are largely and very, very well explained in the philosophy of the Tao. For those that don't know, Taoism is a Chinese philosophy. It's Taoism and Confucianism were the two main Chinese philosophies. And eventually Buddhism got to China, and eventually they all kind of went everywhere. But in Taoism, for the fun fact, those wondering, it's pronounced Taoism, even though it's spelled with a T. And it's also spelled with a D. I've seen different things. So just now you can impress all your friends.
I was pronouncing it incorrectly earlier.
I did that for you. It doesn't really matter that much, but just a fun fact. So anyway, and so I would say second to Christianity, Taoism is something that I've studied a lot. And then Buddhism might be third on that list. And so the Taoist philosophy, basically, long story short, is a lot of what we're talking about. It's balance, and it's real balance. Well, I think in the West, we have a very strange version of balance, and I want to talk about this in a second. But many of you probably know the yin and the yang symbol, right? And if I had a piece of paper, I could draw it. But, basically it's a circle with kind of what looks like a little white fish and a black dot, and then a little black fish with a white dot.
Order and chaos.
Exactly.
Right?
And feminine and masculine, the logical and the whatever, okay? Yeah. And so Taoism is basically the philosophy of mutually interdependent opposites. That things that are opposite aren't necessarily contradictory. I think a better way to say it is they're complementary. And so, for example, a great example of this would be something as simple as geometry and shapes. The shape convex and concave, right? This is pretty empty, so I'll use this. So, convex and concave. The inside of this cup is concave. But the outside, if you look at it, it's just its own object protruding from something else, is convex. And so the point is that they can't exist without each other. You can never have a concave object that doesn't also produce a convex object, right? And so they arise mutually. They arise together. And the same is true with dark and light and opposite forces of positive and negative, right? They don't mean anything without their opposite.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, these opposites are complementary. They're not contradictory. So I say that in part to say that some people don't quite understand. I'm not trying to make people feel bad about their understanding about Taoism, but I think some people are confused as to how the yin and the yang really works. It's not like the way or the Tao is this middle path that's like a balance of the two. It is the fullness of both at all times. It's understanding that You need, like we were talking about earlier, you need logic, but you also need intuition. You need both, and if you rely too much on one, it gets way out of whack.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way this translates to Christianity, for example, would be something like the idea of heaven. So the idea of heaven, or more specifically, paradise in the Old Testament, paradisium, I think in the Latin. Oops, sorry. Paradise is a walled garden. And it was Jordan Peterson that actually first said this, that I heard. And so paradise is a walled garden. It's a perfect example of the Tao.
Yeah.
It's walled in the sense that it has order, right? The wall represents order, and the garden represents chaos. But it's beautiful chaos. Yeah. It's organic, it's natural. It's beautiful because it's natural, because it's not perfectly ordered, right? Yeah. You didn't put every leaf in place. And that's what makes it so beautiful. It's like, wow, look at what happened. Wow, that's just by happenstance, right? Yep. That's what makes it so beautiful is its spontaneity. But a garden without a wall is bound to be destroyed by all the outside forces, right? A garden without a wall is bound to get way out of control. And so it's a perfect example to me of the balance between chaos and order. Heaven is that balance. Paradise is that balance. You need the wall, but you also need the garden. Now, imagine that you have just the wall and no garden. Oh, that just feels like prison, right? Now imagine that you have just a garden and no wall. Well, that feels like a jungle, and that's scary, right? But when you have both, and again, it's just a metaphor. I'm not saying wherever there's a wall, there has to be a garden. Gotcha. Obviously, it's just a metaphor. But wherever you have both, you've got this sort of harmony of opposing forces that work together, not against each other. They work together. Yeah. And so this translates to so many things. So let's talk about, for example, the balance of work and life, right? Or work and play. I hear a lot of people say this, and sometimes it kind of makes me not angry. It frustrates me a little bit because going back to the hedonism thing, this phrase that you should work hard and then play hard, that if you work hard, you can play hard. You've earned it, I think, honestly, dude, I think that can be really, really destructive. Yeah, and a lot of people go way too far with it, and they are not in balance. Yeah. They're not using those forces in a complementary way. They're using them in opposing ways. And this is how it bears out, something like this. Someone will work all day at a job they hate, like you were just saying. They hate their job, they hate the people they work with, or at least they don't like it. They don't have to hate it. It's just not fulfilling.
I think most people are in that case. That it's not
unfortunately,
fulfilling.
And I get how you got there. You shouldn't feel terrible about being there. The fact that you're working is good. Yeah. The fact that you're doing that is better than nothing, right? So good for you, man. I mean, you're doing something, but maybe this conversation will help you to just nudge a certain way. Again, that boat kind of turning slowly. But people will work all day and not enjoy their job, and it's stressful. And then they'll get home and they'll say, well, I worked really hard, so now I'm going to play really hard. And then it's just pure hedonism. It's just pure impulse. It's just, I'm going to eat a giant meal, have a giant dessert, have 4 glasses of wine or drink a bunch of beer, just sit there on the couch and watch TV, mindless TV that doesn't do anything for me, right? And then I'm going to go to work the next day and do it all again. Yep. And I'm wondering where...
It's out of whack.
It is. And I'm wondering... That's right. They're both wrong. Yeah. That's not balance. That's extreme imbalance.
Exactly.
Of all the same nature. Yep. All of that is chaos. And I'm wondering where in the day you're doing what's meaningful to you. I'm wondering where in the day you are seeking and pursuing fulfillment and not just pleasure, because there's a difference. And that's why Jordan Peterson says you shouldn't just seek happiness, you should seek meaning,
That's just to kind of poke in before I forget about this, that notion is like, we could do a whole podcast or video on kind of just this idea of people feeling unfulfilled at their job, because I think it's a huge topic that needs to be talked about. I went through that for most of the time that I was at my job. And that's the question, is when are you pursuing fulfillment and meaning, or how are you getting that? And most people would say, I can't, because I'm trapped here. I'm not fulfilled here. I have no meaning. That's like so this job. Sad. And it's really sad. Is. And here's something that might help you. And I want to do a video that talks about it in more depth, but I mean, it profoundly changed my life having this mentality and thought process about this. We kind of talked about it a little bit before on one of the other podcasts, but I went from, no joke, hating my job every morning, dreading it, dreading going to work, the stress, the responsibility, the people, overwhelming. It's a stressful job. Anyone in any leadership position, as you've experienced, it's very stressful dealing with other people's emotions. It's one of the most stressful things you can deal with is
a lot of pressure.
Dealing with other people's emotions and personal problems. And that is a part of leadership and management, no matter what job you're doing.
Absolutely.
But I went from hating and dreading my job every day and being a bad leader, being a bad manager, to it being one of the most meaningful things in my life with zero change. Nothing changed at my job. Nothing changed.
That's
I have more responsibility now.
I love that.
I have more responsibility and stress on a day-to-day basis now than I did. And it's one of the most meaningful things in my life simply because I had this shift in perception that I can use this job as an opportunity to dynamically grow every single day if I allow myself to objectively look at this situation as a time for me to see myself growing, and rather than seeing myself in a trap. I used to think I'm a victim and I'm a trap here and I hate this job and it's too much. And then it shifted to me now looking at it every day as I'm lucky to have this opportunity to grow.
I love that.
And learn. I
think that's powerful.
The struggle of that, that's the thing that's powerful about it, right? Is there are people right now working jobs that they hate, that they feel trapped at, that can literally derive meaning from it by realizing that you're in a situation to step up and learn every single day and grow as a complex human being. That doesn't mean you're going to enjoy it.
That's right.
That's the thing. I'm going to make that distinction.
You might not enjoy the specifics of the job.
Doesn't mean you're going to enjoy it and feel happiness. It means that you'll now have meaning because you can see the struggle as a opportunity to grow more than a lot of people will get the chance to grow. Goggins is a good example of someone who talks about the struggle and putting yourself through psychological, mental, physical struggles is really the best way to grow. Yeah. And it just goes right into what you're saying, because that's how I was able to find that balance.
Yeah.
That's how I was able to get to that place with finding that balance, was really having that perception shift and every day approaching it that way. And it is a job in and of itself, having that perception, stay on it. That's a good way to put it.
What I love is I love that story because your job didn't change.
It didn't change.
That's my favorite part. Yeah. People think that they've got to change I got to get out. I got to move. Nope. I got to do something else. Sometimes you do. And sometimes there's a time and a season, whatever, for that, and maybe you're hard stuck. If you're hard stuck, maybe you got to just move. You got to change your situation. Awesome. But not always. And just because you can't change your situation doesn't mean you can't change your mind.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't change your perspective. I love that. I think that's huge. And the Tao would just have, tons to offer here, right? Yeah. Where, for example, I love that. And there's even another layer we can add on top of that or in conjunction with it, which is that instead of thinking it as work and then play, think of your day as work and play at all times.
Yeah.
So in other words, when I used to work at a pizza place, there are really monotonous tasks in any restaurant job, right? We would have to fold just hundreds of boxes. When there weren't a lot of people in the restaurant, you have to do busy work, right? Folding boxes, filling up ranches.
I was a server at one point.
Oh yeah, just the same thing, folding napkins, and you do it every single day, and it's hard to derive meaning from folding pizza boxes and wrapping up, silverware. And so in this job, and people do this a lot, we would make a game out of it. I'll bet I could fold faster than you kind of thing, or even just a game with yourself. Like, okay, yesterday I folded 92 boxes. I'll bet today I can do 110, or whatever. I'll bet I can beat that record. Yep. Make a game out of your job,
for sure.
Right? And then what happens is you are infusing play into your work.
Yeah.
And then when you get home, here's the other part of it. You infuse work into your play. What that means is instead of just doing things that immediately satisfy all your, fleshy desires, right? I just want to feel good, and I want to taste things that taste good, and I want to watch things that make me instantly laugh, all that immediate need for satisfaction. Instead of doing that, maybe try doing something that is both fulfilling and relaxing. So like an example, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'll go and I'll play some video games, and that's kind of my downtime. I don't watch a lot of TV unless it's like a documentary or something, or certain shows I like. But I'll go and I'll play a video game, but I'll listen to an audiobook or a podcast at the same time. And so in that moment, I am both getting the relaxation of just kind of doing something that's semi-mindless. I don't have to think about the game that much, but it's also a little challenging, and it's kind of a puzzle, and that's fun. But at the same time, I'm doing something that's kind of fulfilling to me. I'm listening to an audiobook or a podcast or speech or whatever else, or a sermon. For most people, there's at least one thing out there you could listen to that you would enjoy, right? And I'm doing both at the same time. And so I'm bringing work. What I mean by work is anything that's a little more fulfilling to you, right? That has longer term benefits than just the immediate. And you're putting that into your play. And so what you see here is a perfect picture of the Tao. It's both opposing forces happening simultaneously all day long. So when you're at work, you learn to play a little bit, have fun, play with your coworkers, make fun of each other. You know what I mean? Develop that relationship. That can be fun,
For sure.
And now I do it at school too. I make fun of my other teachers, and the band teacher and I, we always banter, and when he's not in his room, I go and I'll do a little like prank in his room, or sometimes when I'm not in my room, he'll come in my room and he always puts a picture of his dogs or like his face on my desktop, stuff like that, right?
For sure.
And it's those little moments, just little things like that can just brighten you up for just 45 minutes.
And it is
an
like
hour.
Jordan Peterson has talked about this a bit, but I've experienced it firsthand, but it is like that aspect of a lot of working class manual labor jobs, like rough, hard jobs that take a lot of physical labor. A lot of like a big aspect of a lot of those jobs is people like teasing and playing with each other. Like you get that all the time.
Having
it's
fun.
Like you're testing out.
Totally.
And you're kind of teasing, and it's some people view it and they don't like it because they feel like being bullied, but most people feel like it's like it's a game you're playing.
That's right.
It's like trying to make people laugh, whatever.
Right.
It's
and there's a balance
part
there, right? So obviously, if someone is feeling annoyed or bullied, then you need to not probably do that, or at least do it
differently. Or they're not cut out for the job,
or maybe, or you have a conversation with them, say, hey, listen, just like again, authenticity and truth.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, listen, I'm just trying to have fun, and I'm really sorry if that offended you. I won't do that again. And then chances are, after a few months of developing a relationship with that person, they might come around and like poke you a little bit, because everyone likes play. We really do. I don't know. It's just something built in about us. But we
it
love
is
that play,
that definitely. It is a huge part of being a human being and developing and growing is playing. Starting out as children, and that's one of the first things you learn to do is play.
That's right. That's
even with your mom.
Yeah. That's how you learn to trust each other. Yeah, that's how you learn to trust each other.
It's a big part of it.
And so when you make a game out of things, when you do that, when you have fun. I mean, when I did construction just for a very, very small time with my friend. And his dad owned a construction company, and we would go and we would play pranks on each other all the time. It's a long day. You got to have some fun, right? And that made the day so much more enjoyable. We'd have good conversations, which were meaningful. We would also do the work, which itself was meaningful, but hard, and can be tedious. But then you make jokes about each other and you're playful. And so I remember that being such an enjoyable time, but not because the work was enjoyable. Yeah. You know what I mean?
For sure.
At some level, you're like, oh, we did something, and it's all right. We accomplished something, and that's nice by itself. But I remember that being so fun, But why did I see it as fun? Because we had fun. We played, And so again, I think the Tao, the ultimate. Oh, there are elephants. The ultimate message of the Tao really is don't do one extreme thing you hate and then one extreme thing that you think you love, right? As these mutually independent opposing forces that don't work together at all. You're bound to find yourself in the most unfulfilling kind of self-destructive patterns because there's no balance. For sure. Instead, infuse play into your work and infuse work into your play. Yeah. And I love that. And again, this concept of mutually opposing opposites that are complementary, you can apply to so many things. Sure.
I think
so many things.
I think it's a lot of it is like you as an individual, whoever might be listening or anyone thinking about this, you kind of it's your responsibility to really think about that idea. Like how can I do this? It is the kind of the way to try to live your life is with how can I
in my job
find that balance at my job, at home or whatever. And, some people it is by, having a hard job and then having a relaxing evening. For some people, that's probably what it is. And they're living a good life. For some people, and I know this because of my experience, for some people, they just have such a hard, stressful job that how do you find balance at a job that is just grueling, and stressful, and you're tired and you're beaten every single day at the end of it? And I would say, like what I said earlier about just like the perception shift, try thinking about, just start with this one thought, which is if you're like someone working on an oil rig, someone doing something really, really hard, stressful construction work, or if you're digging ditches, or you're doing something that is just a grueling, physical, monotonous job, try to at least start with the thought that you can derive meaning from your situation by viewing yourself as an insanely psychologically tough human being, because most people would not be able to endure that kind of work. If you start with that thought and think, okay, wait a minute, I'm getting up early and coming and doing this every single day, even though I hate it. Just start with the thought that like you're building a strong mind. Branch off, like get out of your situation, like figure out, start saving money. But some people just feel so trapped that like they can't even have any good thoughts associated with it. Just start with that one thought. Goggins is a good example of someone who got me thinking about this more, but just start with the one thought that, wait a minute, I'm building like an insanely strong, psychologically tough mind by enduring this day to day, building this muscle. Imagine if I can 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, save money and then put myself in another situation. It'll be a breeze.
That's right.
You're building that psychology. Just start with that thought. If there's someone listening and you hate your job and it's grueling, just you're building your mind. You're strengthening your mind. Just start there.
It's like
branch
working
off from
out
there
with your mind.
Exactly. Just it's good advice, and it's advice that helped me so much.
And I would also say it all goes back. My nose is itchy. I apologize. I would say it also all goes back to having relationships with the people around you.
Yeah,
I think it's huge. I mean, just think about the difference, right? Think about the difference. Scenario one: you're in a job, you go in, you hate all the people you work with, right? Partly because you haven't really spent a lot of time cultivating those relationships. A lot of
it is your responsibility.
It really is.
To be honest here.
I mean, how much time, how many gifts have you given to those people, And please don't say, and this drives me nuts, I tell my kids this all the time, don't say, well, they never give me a gift.
That's like, the mentality I'm talking about. That is that tribal mentality.
That's right. But the reality is if you're both thinking that, then you both lose.
Exactly.
And no one ever gets a gift.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not saying you have to give a physical gift, but it could be anything. It could just be like, hey, I really like that shirt today.
Makes a big
don't be disingenuous, but just anything that you really believe that is positive about them, say it.
Yeah.
And be silly, be fun, friend them on Facebook. I mean, whatever. I'm not saying you have to do this with every coworker, but if you have at least a couple coworkers, that's all it takes. Just a couple that you really love, that you really get along with, that you maybe hang out like outside of work, that you actually are, that you want to spend time with, right? When you do that, it's like the chances that you'll enjoy that job, right, are so much higher. So scenario one, you hate everyone that you're working with, you just can't stand it. Just imagine for a second that feeling. I imagine it right now, and it's tight, it's tense. You walk in, the feeling when you walk into work, it's just like, oh God, I don't want to be, I hate this, I don't feel like doing this, right? And you'll say it's just because you're tired. You'll say all these reasons as to why you feel the way you feel, but really that's a huge part of it. You don't have that relationship. Scenario two, you walk in and you're friends with everybody, right? Everybody's your friend, you're friends with everybody, and I mean, it's like a party. It's like you're going and you're hanging out with people you enjoy, and you don't have to be best friends with them all, because we're not all compatible with everybody, right? Maybe you're best friends with one or two of them, and you're just nice acquaintances with the rest or whatever. Yeah. That is significant. What changed? The only thing that changed, the duties didn't change, right? The requirements of the job didn't change. The boss maybe didn't change. The work hours didn't change. The office or the cubicle didn't change. Your chair didn't get more comfortable, etc. None of that changed. The only change is your relationship with the people around you. Yeah. That was the only change.
It's a big thing that it's a huge message, and it's also something that you can change like pretty quickly if what it takes. I agree. Just some little thought to throw out there with it is it's victim mentality. Like you have to decide to not be a victim mentality, but it also takes a lot of courage because you're deciding to be a leader.
It does.
In an individual way. You don't have to be in a management position to be a good leader.
Yeah.
You can be a leader no matter what position you're in or no matter what you're doing. And that's what part of it is this, I'm going to decide to have the courage to take those extra steps to be compassionate to the people I'm with. And that's being a leader. That's part of being a leader. It's
I love that
right there.
And I would say it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Think about for a minute, and I already have someone on my mind that I actually feel kind of bad about. There are probably people that you work with that come up to you and want to be your friend. And you're not in that mentality, so you kind of shoot them away.
Yeah.
You know, you let them say their thing. Okay, here comes Susan again to come and tell me about how she tried this new sandwich at this new deli place, and it's just like her favorite. And she tried this other sandwich and it was kind of dry, and she wanted my take on this one. And have I ever been there? And just conversation.
You have a Susan that you work with.
You might have a Susan you work with, right? Most people do. But the reality is maybe she just wants to make her life better by being friends with you.
Yeah.
You know? And
Certainly.
maybe she just wants to, if you guide that conversation to a topic that you want to talk about, that'll be more enjoyable.
Yeah.
You know, instead of letting them, and that goes back to being a leader, you know, instead of letting them initiate everything, maybe try doing it yourself.
Yep.
You know? Anyway, so that's another way to also have some compassion with the people that you work with who are trying this. You know, it has to go both ways. You know, at least just have a good, kind, playful, open, loving relationship with these people. And that's it. You don't have to call them every night. You don't have to hang out with them after hours or drink beers together. But just while you're there, I just think that should be part of the job.
For sure.
I really do. I think that should be part of your job.
Definitely.
You know, because we all want the same thing. We're all humans. You know, we all want that connection. We all want that unity. We all want that love. And I think we all want affection at some level. You know?
For sure.
So that's really important. And so anyway, I just had a thought too. If you wouldn't mind going back to it, I was thinking about how the Tao and Christianity kind of intersect, and how, because again, one of the things we're talking about, I think, in this whole episode is the benefits of religion or something like religion. Well, a life without any meaning, that would be like the nihilistic life. A life without any guiding moral principles, a life without any order, so to speak, is a life completely imbalanced. If you don't have any order, you're bound towards chaos. I mean, that's sort of the entropy of the world. All things move towards chaos in a closed system, you know? And so, as far as I can tell, one of the benefits that I've experienced from religion is order. You know, where else in your life do you go every week to a place like a church or a temple or wherever else, and it's consistent? You see the same people, you know what I mean? You study the same kinds of things, you hear the same kind of music. That consistency can do something to a person, you know?
For sure.
You don't even have to, again, we've said, you don't even have to agree with everything the pastor says or the church says or every word in the song, but just going there every week and getting that experience, that consistency, developing relationships with those people, learning more about yourself, right? Being challenged in new ways, getting new perspectives. Just that order, you know, and then also having, this is kind of the big one, having a hierarchy of values. That's actually a hierarchy that actually has values, right? All that order, God, that is so useful.
It is.
It's so useful. I mean, imagine having a society with no laws, complete chaos.
Yeah,
you would never see it, and it never works. You know, anarchy is, in that sense, just not
society is having laws.
I would agree.
Order. You have to have order to have a society.
That's right. It's part of the prerequisite, you know. And I would say the same thing with fulfillment and happiness. I think a prerequisite to fulfillment and happiness is having some laws for yourself, having some order, you know, and subscribing to some kind of hierarchy of values. And if you partly create that hierarchy yourself, okay. I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm right and you're wrong or whatever, but I will say try and go for a hierarchy that's been tested and tried and is rock solid in many ways. Try and go with one that's either supported by science, research, lots of anecdotal evidence. A lot of people you know have tried blank and it's worked for them, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to just starting from scratch. There's no reason to start from scratch. A lot of people have tried a lot of things, you know, and humans have been doing this for a while. We've been thinking about this for a while. Also, that's one of the benefits to religion. The fact that they're so old, people see that as is a downside.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so antiquated. They're so ancient. They're not updated. They're not modern. You know?
Uneducated, not wise people.
They were just ignorant. They had nothing
yeah.
good to say. And this is what Sam says, and it just makes me so frustrated with him because honestly, there was a line in his book in Waking Up where he said almost verbatim, he said, the religions of the West, specifically Christianity and Islam.
Yeah.
Oh, I have some of the pops again to hear it. The religions of the West, specifically Christianity and Islam. Okay, there, I think it's gone.
All right.
I was trying to get it to go. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's okay. I'll just keep talking. So he was saying that the religions of the West have like little to nothing useful to offer in regards to insights about the human psyche and human experience. And I just like turned it off in my car. I was like,
I haven't read it. Need to read it.
I was just like, really, Sam? Like you really, really believe that, you know? I understand his apprehension with just submitting to Western ideas, you know, and you know, submitting to blind faith and, you know, divine revelation of the Bible. I share all those frustrations with Western religion. But to say that there's nothing is to be completely flippant about something that is so much bigger than any individual can really understand.
For sure.
You know? And this is what Jordan Peterson points out. I agree with him. I don't think that the fact that religions are ancient and old and have been around for a long time is as much of a weakness as it is a strength.
Yeah.
I don't.
I agree with that.
Now
it's a huge strength.
It totally is. It's
the amount of thought that's gone into it.
Thousands of years, literally thousands of years of human insight, human experience, right? I think we think of these people as like cavemen. I think we think of them as like,
a lot of people do.
Oh, like, oh God, oh. You know, like they had they still had neocortexes. I mean, these people still had brains. They had logic, you know. Socrates lived before Jesus, and Socrates was incredibly logical, right? Socrates and Plato and all of the Greeks, they thought more logically than most people do today.
Yeah.
Yet they were of antiquity, you know? So we need to dispel with this myth that because things are ancient, they're useless or they're outdated or they're obsolete, you know? That's incredibly, I think it's really, really toxic, honestly, to believe that.
Here's,
really
just
productive.
A suggestion, if you are someone who kind of has that mentality about religion, a fun thing that you can do is do a little bit of research about all the main religions, even the ancient Egyptian, the Mayans. Just do research on like kind of the top 10 like most popular religions,
right?
And find commonalities in all of them, and then think about those commonalities from a more psychological, metaphorical perspective and compare them. And you'll very quickly start to see there is this common, you know, thread. There's a deep common truth thread that intertwines all of these things. And that's all religions are in my mind, is people thinking about these things back then. Yeah. And because there was no science.
Trying to figure it out.
Trying to figure it out. Questions. Like really thinking about these deep emotions and intuitions and what is life? Why are we doing this? Why should we? Because I mean, imagine being someone living thousands and thousands of years ago in an extremely tribal world. Why do any good ever? Why would you back then? Why would you ever do anything good for anyone when you're having to literally like survive every single day in a very primitive way?
And they partly created these narratives and these stories, you know, and these myths. And I'm happy to admit that some of them can totally be fiction. I'm not saying that all this has to be literal, perfect, true. And I said this in the last one too. I don't think it matters so much because the stories can still be useful. But they created these narratives in part to avoid the very nihilism that we now find ourselves in.
Yeah, and they did it back then with a lot less.
Right?
Exactly, with a lot less knowledge.
Just a lot less everything. And, science, you know, knowledge, technology,
it's really wild
industry,
to think about it.
Money, you know, time.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, it's incredible. It really is. It's incredible that they even found... I'm inspired by it. Yeah. I'm inspired that those people could even find meaning in anything. Yeah. You know, I mean, really, you know, it's to always be at war with another culture, to always be worrying about famine and where your next meal was going to come from, to always be worrying about, you know, the group over the hill that hates you and, you know, you don't want to go to sleep because they could kill you in your sleep and you have no technology to detect them. Just think about that. That's a volatile world. Yeah. But they were able to find tons of meaning in it, tons of meaning, and it doesn't go without downsides. Of course, there are downsides to the ancient way of living, There are, of course, downsides to the ancient way of thinking.
Yeah.
But there are downsides to the modern way of living, and there are downsides to the modern way of thinking,
Yeah.
And so I don't, again, think that it's one or the other. And I don't think that it has to be so this or that.
Yeah.
That's sort of the Tao in me, too, is like, both, dude. It's both. Like it's both and none and all, and it's all of it, And you include some of that ancient stuff. This is what I'd love. This is like my dream church or dream religion is take all the old stuff that was good, that was really useful, that's been proven and tested and tried over and over again in people's lives as transformative and effective and profound. Take all that stuff. It could be a myth, story, narrative, saying, whatever, right? Take all that. Take all the good stuff of today, science, medicine, right? Research about physics and astronomy and the world and understanding psychology and sociology, how the human brain works, evolution, right? Great thing to understand. Take all of the old stuff, take all the new stuff, and dude, run with it. All of it. Because more can't hurt you. More good stuff can't hurt, And then I'd say dump the science we don't need. Dump good science. Most good science we do need, but there is bad science out there, right? So dump some of that. Dump some of the assumptions that some scientists have about ultimate reality. Dump nihilism. That's not useful. Sorry. There are certain things even in modern times we should dump, and then there are certain things in ancient times we should dump. Dump that too, Now, the hard part, of course, is how do we decide what's useful and what's not? How do we decide what to keep and what to dump? I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that if we begin having these conversations more often, we can start to kind of parse that. We can start to analyze case by case. Yeah. Is this useful? Is this useful? Is this useful on the whole?
Yeah.
And then even be more specific. Is this useful for me?
That's what I was going to say.
Is
this as an individual, one step you can take right now, if you're struggling with all this stuff, you're not religious, and you still after this conversation see religion primitively and as a very stupid thing to put your faith in. Just the first step is, how do you feel? How are you feeling day to day when you wake up? How are you feeling? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you feeling depressed? Are you always anxious? Are you feeling hopeless about your life, about the future? If that's the case, try thinking about things that have worked in the past that have actually made people feel better. Don't approach it as I have to believe in God and accept Jesus. Just think, well, it's pretty common that people who have that mentality and go through these religious experiences feel better.
It is very common.
Think about it logically. I just don't want a big thing that I'm doing all this for. So I just want to help people feel better.
Yeah.
I want to help people who might feel suicidal. I just want to help, and I know that there are all these different viewpoints. There are people that still after this conversation it's not resonating with them, and just start there. Just start and really, really brutally analyze yourself and be honest with yourself and think, well, how do I feel? If you align with a nihilism mindset or you identify as a nihilist, just how do you feel? I mean, and maybe you feel great and you feel amazing. And if you do, almost certainly you're probably acting religious in a lot of ways, like we've talked about, but just think about it. Mainly that question is for someone if you're not feeling good.
And if you have, I love that. And if you have an apprehension to faith in general, I'm sorry. Think about this. And I said this a little bit earlier, and I want to kind of circle back to it. It's like one of our closing, ideas.
Yeah, we're pushing. I think we're pushing past 2 hours.
Yeah, and awesome. I mean, I'm down to do 5 or whatever you want. But this is something to think about. Again, I want to reiterate this point. You probably have a number of beliefs right now, today, in this moment, that are faith-based. Let's take another one. This is a very Goggins, Jocko kind of thing. That the idea that you can accomplish anything, you set your mind to it, you can do anything you want. You go for it, get after it, kind of thing. Don't wait, do it now, and you can reach your dreams. You can accomplish your most lofty goals. Well, if we're going to be really honest, we don't really have evidence of that. That's not really a reasonable or rational perspective. That's not founded in science. That's not even founded in statistics, But but it's here. You know what I'm saying?
Here, which is a big case to make.
It is a big case to make. There are so many reasons to do that, to believe that way, to think that way, that go beyond science.
Yeah.
There are so many reasons to believe that, even though it's not supported or founded by statistics, for example.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And what I want to say is that to me is the benefit of religion.
Yeah, for sure.
That to me that goes back to, anyway, the benefit of religion is it goes beyond that. It goes beyond, because even that's a thing right there that most people who are atheists and secular humanists, whatever they want to call themselves, or nothing, probably subscribe to. They probably believe in, okay, I just believe in myself and I believe in hard work and I believe I can accomplish anything. Even that is a set of values, a hierarchy of values.
Potential.
Right?
Just even keeping it simple that they believe that they have potential.
That's right. And even that is an idea that itself is not totally founded in any science or research. It's just an idea it's an ideal you've replaced God with, which is better than nothing. I totally agree with that. And maybe for some people it even becomes their God. I don't know. And that's another conversation as to whether that's good or bad. But it's something. And so good, start there. But my point is that don't think you're exempt from faith. And don't have such an aversion to faith, because faith itself is just, again, the bridge that closes the gap between certainty and mystery. I don't know what my future is going to look like. I don't know what I can accomplish in 30 years. But if I have faith that I can do everything I want to do, and I can pursue it, I get those degrees, and I work at that college, and I write that book, and do all this fun stuff, and I stay fit, and I marry an awesome woman that we totally get along. If I have all these goals, and I really pursue it with everything I've got, even though that's a faith-based mentality, it's a faith in a future that I haven't seen yet, right? It's a faith in a future that I can't prove, that I don't have evidence for, that science has not supported. Awesome. You know what I mean? Still better than not that, Still better than not that, but still faith. 100%, dude. That's still faith. 100%. You've got faith in something you can't prove, but I don't think that's a bad thing. For sure. And so I'd love in our culture if we kind of dispelled the myth that like faith is this bad word. It's almost come to mean a bad word, hasn't it? Yeah. And especially for a lot of people, especially in like intellectual circles, it's come to me. I don't have faith in in people and gods and religions, but you have faith in something, and you have faith in something that probably isn't scientific, but that doesn't make it bad. And that's the point, doesn't make it necessarily good. You've got to judge whether it's good for you or not in other ways. But don't be so averse to it, because faith itself is so powerful, and it's through faith that you're saved from hell, saved from despair and depression, anxiety. It's through faith that you're saved from those things. Belief that you don't have to live that way.
Definitely. Well, Kris, I think this is a good place to wrap this up.
I think so too.
We have had an amazing conversation, and I feel like this just opened up a ton of more topics now for future podcasts. It's funny.
Every time we talk, I feel like that. It's like, now I have more things that I want to explore with you.
For me, it's like digging deeper every time. And the next one, it's like, all right, let's try to go deeper for the next one. Let's keep just trying to go as deep as we can with this stuff. So
totally.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you.